Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you for all the endless support. Because of you, the channel has officially reached over 4,000 watch hours. That milestone has unlocked some exciting new features: Super Chat, which lets you send highlighted messages during live streams, Super Thanks, where you can show extra support on regular videos with a special highlighted comment, and Super Stickers, which are fun, animated stickers you can send during live chats to stand out and keep things lively. Plus, channel memberships are now available, giving you access to exclusive perks. And who knows, I might even do a members-only live stream sometime soon. I'm incredibly grateful for every like, comment, and view, and I'm so excited for what's ahead. Now, let's get into the video. Wicked for Good, the second half of the Wicked story, has always felt to me like a more subdued and reflective continuation of a truly electric beginning, and while it never quite reaches the same level of excitement or emotional punch as the first half, it remains compelling in its own, quieter way. The first act thrives on momentum. The unlikely friendship between Elphaba and Glinda, the humor, the spectacle, and the gradual unveiling of Oz's corruption all work together to create a sense of discovery and wonder that's hard to top. By contrast, Wicked for Good shifts its focus inward, slowing the pace to explore the consequences of the choices the characters have already made. That shift is part of why it feels less interesting at times. The surprises are fewer, the tone is heavier, and much of the act is driven by inevitability rather than some big revelation. We already know where the story is headed, so the tension comes not from what will happen, but from how the characters learn to live with it. Still, that doesn't make the second half weak. Its strength lies in its emotional honesty, especially in how it portrays fractured relationships, moral compromise, and the bittersweet nature of growth. Songs like For Good resonate precisely because they abandon spectacle in favor of reflection, showing that change is rarely triumphant and often painful. While it may not be as thrilling or dynamic as the first half, For Good deepens the story, giving it weight and maturity that linger long after the curtain falls. That appreciation for stories that are imperfect, challenging, and more interested in emotional truth than easy satisfaction is something that carries over into other works I admire as well. The success of the second half ultimately rests on how convincingly the performers carry the story's emotional weight, and for the most part, the characters rise to that challenge in ways that feel more restrained, but no less meaningful. Elphaba's journey becomes quieter and more inward here, and strong performances emphasize her exhaustion and moral resolve rather than the raw defiance that defines her earlier arc, making her isolation feel earned and deeply human. Glinda, meanwhile, undergoes perhaps the most subtle transformation, and the best portrayals lean into her growing self-awareness, allowing moments of humor to coexist with guilt and regret in a way that adds real complexity to what could otherwise feel like a simple fall from grace arc. Fiero's shift from carefree charm to disillusioned loyalty can feel abrupt on the page, but when played with sincerity, it becomes one of the act's emotional anchors, especially as his choices begin to cost him everything. Madame Morrible and the Wizard benefit from performances that highlight their chilling banality. Rather than melodramatic villains, they often come across as calmly manipulative, which makes their impact more unsettling and thematically effective. Nezarose and Bach, though given less stage time, leave a strong impression with their idea that collateral damage is one of the story's central concerns. Altogether, these performances help transform a structurally quiet act into something resonant, proving that even when the plot slows, careful, emotionally grounded character work can sustain the story's power and give its themes lasting weight. Fiero and Bach's fates are where Wicked for Good most directly and hauntingly folds itself into The Wizard of Oz, and the transition works precisely because their endings are rooted in consequence rather than destiny alone. Fiero's arc, which begins in the first half as effortless charm and emotional detachment, culminates in a choice that finally costs him something real. his decision to stand with Elphaba leads to his capture and apparent execution, a moment that reframes his earlier gullibility as a kind of armor he has slowly shed. The reveal that Elphaba's spell saves him by transforming him into the Scarecrow is one of the musical's most bittersweet turns. He survives, but only by losing his former identity, intelligence, and voice as the world knew them. This directly mirrors the film's Scarecrow, whose quest for a brain takes on a tragic irony when viewed through Wicked's lens. He once had everything he thought he lacked, and his gentle wisdom becomes a quiet echo of the man he used to be. Boq's fate is even more overtly tragic, functioning as an unyielding love for Glinda, and his resentment toward Elphaba push him toward Nezerose's increasingly authoritarian rule, and his attempt to assert control ultimately leads to his near death. Elphaba's desperate effort to save him results in his transformation into the Tin Man, a being who can no longer feel, an outcome that cruelly literalizes his emotional stagnation. In The Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man longs for a heart, but Wicked reframes that longing as the consequence of a life spent fixating on what he could never have, rather than embracing what was possible. Together, Fiyero and Boq serve as living bridges between Wicked and the film, embodying the idea that iconic figures Dorothy meets are not symbols of missing qualities, but survivors of emotional wounds. Their transformations underscore Wicked's central thesis that the myths we inherit are often softened versions of painful, complicated truths, and that the bright simplicity of Oz is built on stories that have already broken people apart. As for the Cowardly Lion, his tragic backstory is admittedly a little harder to take seriously. He's traumatized by Elphaba's spell into cowardice, which is thematically sound but also slightly hilarious in its execution. Unlike Fiyero and Boq, whose transformations feel weighted with loss and irony, the lion's fate lands with the realization that Oz's most famously anxious resident became that way because of one bad magical intervention and has been milking it ever since. It's a sobering thought that while others lose their identities or their ability to feel, the lion mostly just gains a lifelong excuse to panic, hesitate, and dramatically overthink every situation. It's also weird given the context that he's only angry with Elphaba because if she hadn't decided to save him, he might not have grown up to be the coward he is today. What kind of plotline is that, Winnie Holzman and Dana Fox? Real quick, if you're enjoying this video and want to support the channel in a bigger way, check out my Patreon. It's a great way to help me keep creating. You'll get some cool extras like behind the scenes stuff, early access, and more. Links in the description if you want to take a look. Thanks so much. One of the biggest differences between the Wicked Broadway musical, the film adaptation of Wicked for Good, and Gregory Maguire's original novel comes down to how each version handles tone, detail, and the audience's emotional distance from the characters. The stage musical, especially in its second half, feels intentionally spare. Once the spectacle and excitement of the first act fade, the story depends almost entirely on performance, music, and implication. Because the audience already knows where things are headed, the musical doesn't spend much time explaining motivations or consequences in depth. Instead, it trusts songs and brief scenes to suggest emotional shifts, which can make For Good feel rushed or muted for some viewers. The film has more freedom to slow things down and fill in those gaps. Through close-ups, quieter pauses, and visual storytelling, the movie can sit with Elphaba's isolation or Glinda's guilt in ways the stage version can only gesture toward. Scenes that feel abrupt in the musical-like changes in loyalty or moments of regret can be expanded so they feel more natural and lived in. At the same time, the film risks losing some of the musical's symbolic simplicity by showing too much. When everything is visually concrete, there's less room for the audience to imagine meaning for themselves. The novel, however, is the most different of all three, especially in the second half. Maguire's book is darker, slower, and far more political, spending pages on philosophy, religion, and the mechanics of Oz's power structures. Elphaba is less openly sympathetic, Glinda is sharper and more self-serving, and the story is more interested in ideas than emotional payoff. Where the musical softens characters to create emotional clarity, and the film tries to balance feeling with realism, the book often keeps readers at a distance, forcing them to sit with discomfort and moral ambiguity. In that sense, the quieter, heavier tone of For Good actually sits closer to the novel's spirit than the first half ever does, even if it doesn't fully embrace the book's bleakness. Each version tells the same basic story, but they ask for different kinds of attention. The book asks you to think, the musical asks you to feel, and the film tries to help you understand why the characters feel the way they do. What really pushes this change from something I merely dislike into something that actively frustrates me is how Elphaba's survival undercuts the entire structure of the story, especially the heavy foreshadowing built around her supposed death. From the very beginning, across The Wizard of Oz, the book, and even the musical itself, the audience is told over and over that the Wicked Witch dies. That knowledge hangs over every choice Elphaba makes, giving her arc a sense of tragic inevitability. In the novel, that inevitability is paid off in a way that feels cruel but honest. The world moves on, the truth is lost, and Elphaba's life is reduced to a story people barely understand. That ending reinforces the central idea that history is written by those in power, and that even meaningful resistance can be erased or distorted. The musical and film, however, spend so much time gesturing toward the same outcome through dialogue, symbolism, and direct connections to The Wizard of Oz, only to pull back at the last second. Letting Elphaba survive doesn't just soften the blow, it makes much of the buildup feel misleading. The foreshadowing stops being tragic and starts feeling like a fake-out, which weakens the emotional logic of the ending. Compared to the original Wizard of Oz, where the witch's death is simple, final, and unquestioned, the musical's version feels like it wants the weight of tragedy without actually committing to it. By sparing Elphaba, the story trades its most powerful thematic point that goodness doesn't guarantee survival for comfort and closure. That choice doesn't ruin the entire story, but it does dull its sharpest edge, which is why I ultimately prefer the book's ending and find the first half of both movies far more effective. Those beginnings embrace uncertainty and consequence, while the ending backs away from them just when they matter most. And then, of course, there's the real-world emotional fallout. Watching interviews about the film where Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo talk about crying constantly on set is a lot.
Wanted you to come back. Yeah, we asked for you. We needed you that day. You really changed the energy of the day.
I want you to look at each other.
Oh no, don't, I'm sorry.
Do it again. I can't. This is the setup.
It's been a pleasure spending time with you. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I hope you will be there for the rest of my life.
I hope you'll let my friendship be one of the things that you're learning how to let in. Oh man. Oh no, babe.
No.
Yeah. He cried.
Yeah. Well, he cried, and it just that was my name when I first saw Wicked.
Look, I get it. Big feelings, big roles, meaningful story, but at a certain point, it starts to sound less profound and more like Theater Kid Olympics. Like, yes, we understand you felt everything, but maybe we don't need to hear about every shared sob and trembling breath. It's earnest, it's heartfelt, and it's also just a little embarrassing. In that way, only extremely sincere performers can manage. Thank you so much for watching. This video took a lot of time to make, so I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And please make sure to turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. More quality videos like this one coming soon. Once again, I really appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.